Hey guys, what if I told you you know enough right now to get started building your business? Hey everybody, so it is time for you to start implementing. um, so I've been seeing a lot of people over the past few years just struggling to actually start their business, right? And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because I wanted to tell you a story actually about when I was in my career, my 9 to 5. You all probably know, or most of you know, that I started my business while working a 9 to 5, and I was in, application development, IT, and I worked, my way into project management and that kind of stuff. So long story, but that's not the story I wanted to tell you. So today I wanted to tell you a story about how we had to learn when we were learning things like a brand new coding language, right? So we went from this old school coding language called COBOL. It's still around actually, but not very much. And then we moved to server-based code, so Java and all the coding languages that go with that. So when you learn to code in Java or .NET, you have to learn Java, CSS, jQuery, JavaScript, all these different languages, right? And we didn't have the luxury to spend years learning that stuff. We had to implement right away. And so what we did was we would go to a basic training. Usually it was just in Java. We had to learn the other languages just, by trial and error and using the internet. And back in those days, the internet wasn't like it is today in terms of getting coding help and stuff. So we were expected to do really, really complex things with our code when we were beginners, right? And so we had to take like a continuous improvement kind of approach to how we learned. And I wanted to show you this little diagram because I think it's super helpful. And I'm going to just share my screen. There it is. So we kind of take this approach when we're learning, and this is a great approach for you to take when you're learning as well. And the reason why is because you don't want to stay stuck in learning. When we get stuck in learning, you're just down a rabbit hole all the time, and you're so worried about what you don't know that you just get stuck there, right? And it's really hard to really implement everything that you are learning. So instead, what we do is you already probably learned enough, right? You already have a bunch of courses, I'm sure, that you've taken. You might even have them sitting on a virtual shelf. And so we'll talk about that in a minute, a strategy on how you can actually help yourself leverage those trainings and those courses that you purchased as a business asset so that you can continue learning. But we do a cyclical approach when we're in the coding world, and I embrace that same approach now. And so I have my goals and objectives. I have the projects that I'm working on, and I attempt to implement with what I already know. And when I get stuck, then I can start recognizing and evaluating what my skill gap actually is, and then begin the problem solving to fill that gap, right? So it might be, getting better at emails, and maybe I'm focusing on getting better at writing good emails or something like that, right? So instead of like trying to learn that years ago when I started my business, I might focus on it now, where before I was just kind of doing the bare minimum, just, getting it out there, doing the things so that I could get some feedback, right? Because it's really helpful to get that feedback. And make that a little smaller now. It's really helpful to get that feedback from people and see how people are responding. It gives you a baseline of information that you need. And then you can go through and start filling the skill gap that you have of writing good, effective emails. And then, fill that gap with that particular training or whatever it is that you have. Maybe it's one you already have, or maybe it's one that you need to actually go out and find so that you can get better at that skill of writing effective emails, right? And now, since you were actually just implementing with what you knew, you were just getting stuff out there, you have a baseline stats, and then you can get some measurement on how did this course help you improve your emails? Are your open rates better? Are your are you getting more results? Are you getting more buyers? Are you getting, more click-through rate, a bigger, higher click-through rate or whatever? So don't be afraid to get your stuff out there and get it out there as quick as you can with what you already know, because it gives you a chance to get baseline data so that when you make improvements, you actually can see the improvement and you don't have such a big build out that you have to do because you've already built the basic structure of whatever it is you're doing, right? You've already learned your email software. You don't have to learn it now after you just took a course, right? You already know how to create an automation, a sequence, and creating campaigns and those kinds of things. You don't have to do that now. Now you can focus in on the skill of actually learning how to write an effective email rather than the skills of learning how to use your email software, right? And so if you think about that, it's kind of like peeling an onion, right? And that's really kind of the Scrum way of doing things, is you sort of peel the layers of the onion away and you dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the skill that you want to acquire, but you do it in a way that's easier for you to continually implement and try new things and be more bold about what you learn. Now, I wanted to just mention also about, how you can start leveraging your courses and all that as a skill or as a business asset, because, a lot of times you buy something and then it goes on your virtual shelf. You completely forget about it. Maybe you never finish it. You do a couple of things and maybe you do 1 or 2 lessons and then you're on your way and you get away from it and you never get back. And so a way to do that is to start putting all your courses on either a Trello board or whatever you use to manage your business. And like a Trello board, it's kind of cool. You can put a column for each type of learning, like email, right? And, website development and social media and all that. And you can create a card for each course. And then within that course, you can have like a little checklist or whatever of all the different units. I also have a little download, and it's free right now. It's called Take Charge of Your Learning, and it just helps you get the get your all your learning and everything in one place so that you can leverage it and utilize it as a business asset, so you don't keep going down that rabbit hole and the next thing and on and on and on, where you and in fact you may already have tons of training that you already can leverage. And then if it doesn't meet that skill gap after you try to implement it, then you can start searching for a better solution. Now, in my Take Charge of Your Learning, I also have a template for a form that you can create for your business to justify the purchase of training, because as the CEO of your business, you have to watch your income and your outgo and all that stuff, right? And so especially if you have a team and they're like, hey, we need this training in order to do this, and maybe you don't have a team now, but you might someday, or for your own self, you think I need this, you can complete this form. And you don't even have to complete it in writing. You can just complete it mentally, right? And kind of justify to yourself that it really is something that you want to purchase right now. And that will help you be a more strategic buyer and a more strategic learner. And then you can start learning by project. Like I said, you might be working on a project where that's it. I got to get my email. I need to be better at emails and get a better conversion rate on my emails, right? Well, first you're looking at metrics, right? You're looking at data. You're not just randomly doing something. So you're realizing that you have a problem in your business, that you need to get a better click-through rate on your emails. You need to make more sales through your emails. You need to get a better open rate on your emails, right? And so you've recognized that you have a gap there, a problem, and And so now you can start going and looking for the right training. And you do that training as part of your project. It's not just random learning. In fact, I had a client the other day ask me, because I was telling her about, like, dividing your time during the week, right? You divide your time, like, you have content creation that you probably do every week, whether it's just for social media, for a blog, for podcast, for a YouTube channel, all of the above. If you're using my method of content creation, and so you have that you have to do along with your projects, along with all these other things, and you don't want to get learning. You don't want to make learning such a big portion of your week that it just takes up all of your time and you never get anything done. And so instead, you implement that learning, you do that training at the time that you're going to implement that project. So your learning becomes very strategic because you're learning that thing while you're trying to do that project. And you see how that can be just so much more targeted, that you actually probably finish the training because now you've actually decided on a strategy by purchasing a training or whatever. And now you're going to implement that strategy rather than just, going here and going there in 100 different ways, because there are 100 ways to do things, right? There are 100 ways to do things. Everybody has their methodology, but when you purchase training, you're actually committing to trying that method and doing that method and whatever it is that it is. So commit yourself to it and see it through so that you can get the most out of that training. And then later down the road, if it doesn't work as well as you want, then you go into the continuous improvement process and make sure that you followed all that training and you did it effectively. And you can go through that continuous improvement process and even watch the videos again and audit your work instead of just doing it from scratch. Now you're in an audit mode as you go through that course, and you audit your work and make improvements and then measure again. And you can keep doing that and repeating that training, and each time you repeat that training, it's quicker to get through, right? Because you're really looking for specific things to focus on as you are learning. You're specifically focusing on getting a better open rate, right, on your emails. Maybe this time around, you're really auditing, how am I going to do my headlines better so that I can, get a better open rate? And then the next time you iterate through, it's okay, how to get better clicks, how to set things up so the call to action is there and it's, irresistible, and all those different things that, you need to learn how to do, right? And so do you see, though, how targeted things can be? It can really make a difference in how you learn, and then what you learn, and how your methodology of learning, rather than just trying to learn everything up front before you even implement a thing. Instead, you learn as you go, just like in this image. You have goals and objectives. You attempt to implement with what you know. You evaluate and determine that skill gap. You fill the gap, and then you just continually, you go through it again and again and again until you've filled all those gaps and you've solved the problem and made the goal, right? If your goal is to have, a 50% open rate on your emails and you're only getting 10, you're not done, right? You got to keep going through this iteration and learning more about everything, tweaking, fine tuning, because remember, the success is really in the fine tuning of it, right? Is making it your own, fine tuning it, getting out that screwdriver and that wrench and just tweaking the little things, because the little things are what are really going to make the difference and help you achieve those revenue goals that you're trying to achieve, right? But you got to start with building your business. So if you're struggling to implement and it's because you're stuck in learning, grab my Take Charge of Your Learning download. It's at thescrumshop.com/shiny-object-syndrome, shiny object syndrome, right? With dashes in between. So check it out and see what you think. And I'd love to hear what you think of that little document, because I think it's really helpful, and I use it myself, and I leverage it myself. And I have boards that I've created with all of my trainings and all of my courses, and I've tracked, how far I've gone through them. And the beauty of doing that is that you can put notes in the card about like the big takeaways that you got and then what you implemented of that thing. And then you'll know like, okay, I already implemented this, but there was this other big takeaway. I haven't implemented that yet. So I'm going to do that first before I move on. Okay. All right, you guys. So I hope that helps you. Grab my thing. I'll drop it in the comments so you can grab it. It's free right now. Won't be free forever because eventually it's probably going to be a course or something or part of a bigger course. All right. So take care and I will see you in the comments.